David, tell me a little bit about specific stories of war. Because I've heard you mention one of the things when we talked years ago was you spoke about the machines of war. You talked about courage and shown in that the fog of war. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think the way I think about courage now is really that there's a courage has a like a parallel with fear, and it's for me it's not so much what the action is that people are doing, but it's really what they're managing. So it's like managing your own relationship with fear because you'll see people who are like I'm not afraid of heights. So if let's say I don't know my kitty gets stuck on the roof, I can go up there and get it. But if you're terrified of heights, and this ladder now becomes Mount Everest, but you're willing to, you know, crawl your way up there to save your cat, right? Like you've done something more courageous than I have in that particular instance, right? And so I think for me, the war aspect, right? Like I was okay with dying, right? I was okay with, at least as much as you can be, right? When you're in that situation, there's times where you're like, oh, this is like, like one time I was on a roof and we were getting pinned down by snipers.
They're shooting at you.
They're shooting at us very like, because there's a difference between like sort of being shot at as a group and being individually shot at, or when they start getting close, like the way the bullets sound, but also like, so there's times you're like getting shot, like we'll be walking and people start shooting, right? But, maybe there's some bullets laying off on the side or whatever. But there's also been a couple times where like I'm standing like and I'm running and like leaves are getting shot and they're like like the tree that I'm standing under is getting shot and it's like this is really close. But anyway, I was on a roof. We've been pinned down. We've been up there for a while. They'd stopped shooting for a while. And my chief is like, he's like, look over that wall and see if they're still out there, right? And this is where I should have been like those old school cartoon sniper guys where I put my helmet on a stick and put it up. But I just looked over a wall and instantly it was like that. And thank God there was these like 2 meter thick like mud walls they used in this Afghan compound that we had taken over. And the bullet went like an inch below the top. Where if it gone like just a little bit more, it probably would have skipped up. Or if the wall was thinner, I would have been dead, right? And so I was like, oh my gosh. But even that, I wasn't like, I was just like laughing because we had taken this army guy with us who was a medic because we were trying to. It's really funny. This is kind of what these weird, these like behind the scene things in the military and other organizations. You're like this kind of is not cool. But so the army guys, if they get a medal like a combat action ribbon, it's a really big deal for them. So we would try to bring some people out with us so that they could, if we got shot at, they would get a combat action ribbon. So that was like a big deal for them, even though we didn't really need them. It was like this weird thing.
So they're just so you're like,
Basically,
okay.
yeah, you just bring them so they could like check a box.
If they're in a gunfight, then they would get like some sort of
right, yeah. So, and sometimes it's like a big deal. Like it'll help them with promotions later. It'll help them with leadership relations. So it's like, especially in some of the support roles. Anyway, but he looks at me and he was like, if you get shot in the face, I can't save you. I just started laughing because I was like, even though we're on the roof getting shot, I'm like, what are you talking about? If I get shot in the face, I'm dead, man. No one expects you to save us. It's fine. Like, don't worry about it, And he's just like pale and scared, and me and these other guys are laughing. Like after I almost got shot in the face, I'm like, I look at my, I said some different kind of words. Basically, I was like, what the heck was that, man? Like he almost got me killed. But like in a fun, more way, because it's just like that's the mindset I was in at the time, just, but back to a story about like courage, and I think for me, there was a time later, and I also went to Iraq, and so I had a whole, kind of experience there. And so I won't get into details of where I was or what I was doing, but I basically had an experience where the leadership was making some choices, and they wanted to send us to do some things, and they decided not to go with us.
the leadership.
Yeah, the guys and they wanted us because they wanted us to have experiences, and we did one of the things they wanted us to do, and it didn't go well at all. And a lot of the guys in the platoon were coming and, just like, what's happening? Like, they can still come with us. They can give us an opportunity to make some calls on the scene, but like, we want them to be there. And, there's a lot of stuff happening that was just weird. And it was towards the end of a combat deployment. And so we had like a few weeks until we went home, and people had almost died a bunch of times. And it was like, they're like, what is going on? Like, why aren't they coming with us, So anyway, so everyone was like upset. The mood was bad. And some guys came to me and were like, dude, you got to say something. The thing was, I wasn't in a leader position really at this time. I was kind of in charge of some of like the junior guys, but it was kind of like a fake position. It was just sort of like, cause my LPO at the time was just sort of like, cause I was older. he would just like kind of lean on me to do some things. So anyway, a bunch of guys came to me and they're like, dude, you got to say something. So I went to my LPO. I said something. He's like, dude, it's above me. I can't do anything. I'm sorry, essentially. And so we did another thing, and it was like really bad. People were really upset, right? And I was like, oh, dude.
Like your people in the
Yeah, the people that were going on the op.
like the op didn't go well.
Yeah, it was just like people were just not cool with what was going on, right? And so I was like, dude, I already talked. I'm like, I don't know, dude. But anyway, this is the first time I really thought about courage. And I'm not a big note taker, but I literally went in my room that night and I wrote down like, what is courage? And I realized that the guys in the platoon would rather die than to talk to their own leadership about what was going on, you know? And I think about reputation wise, or just like admit that they were, uncomfortable with the situation, because, and so I was like, all right. And I had a feeling that our leadership was going to be upset. That was kind of like why people because, people had already kind of suggested and made comments and sort of, passive aggressively pushed back. And the leadership was like, no, you're doing this, So it was at the point where I was like, all right, they're probably going to be upset like if I say something, right? So anyway, I went to, the top leader at the time that was there. And I was like, dude, this is messed up. Like we need you guys to be there. Like, if you want to give guys leadership positions, one, like that's what our training's for. Like, do you have an opportunity to train these positions before you do them in real life? It doesn't make any sense to do it here. Second of all, there's just problems with our ability to do it right now, right? These guys, some of the guys that are put in positions were like the chief position or the OIC position, and they weren't qualified, and so
you're talking from like a technical standpoint on the
yeah, but also just like imagine like I don't know, it's just like imagine if like who's like a junior guy at the church and Matt one day was just like, hey man, like you're just gonna start preaching, you're gonna be the head pastor. It's not like he's an elder or something, he's just like a new guy in the church. Maybe he's like he works on the side or something, but like I don't know.
Okay.
He's just not like ready to be in that position, not and hasn't like
he's a greeter. Hey man,
yeah,
preaching today.
You're preaching, it's just like except if you get it wrong, not only might you die, but everyone here might die too, So, but yeah, so I set up like pretty much all night, and I was like, all right, I don't care if I get in trouble. I don't care if they pull my bird. I don't care if I lose my reputation. Like
they would have pulled your bird for this.
No, but this was like, it was like I was stressed. We had been sleeping much. We've been doing combat operations. Like you kind of get a little loopy and crazy, I just like, and you're spiraling. Like, what's the worst thing gonna happen? Like, why am I even resist? Like, because otherwise, like, what is it? Like, why are people not willing to talk, about it? Like, what do you think's gonna happen? It wasn't even so much that I thought it was gonna happen then. It just made me realize, like, what would I be willing to pay? And I realized for me, I was like, I will give up everything, including my bird, including my reputation, including my job, because I would rather do this thing than regret it the rest of my life. And that's kind of where I came, where I was like, okay, like, it wasn't necessarily that I thought that was going to happen. It just thought that I was like willing to. And that clarified for me kind of what courage was. It was like, I will sacrifice everything that I've worked hard for to do because this thing is more important to me. Right. And again, it was funny, like the courage, right? The guys in my platoon would rather get killed than face their leadership, right? In this way. So, anyway, I went to talk to him. It went really bad. Like, he called me a coward and he was like, I'm trying to give you guys an opportunity and stuff, whatever. And it was very strange. But that just helped me understand like what mattered to me, and it wasn't the titles, it wasn't other people's opinions. It was like inside internally, right. For me to what was valuable. But the worst part about it was we had this big meeting right after that. And our leadership was like calling me a coward and like, asking other people if they didn't want to do it. And they're complaining and whining and not appreciative and stuff. And a lot of the other guys didn't say anything. And then I went back to my room after that feeling like, what the heck, dude? Why didn't these guys say anything? And it got even worse. Someone came like, dude, what did you say? Like, and I was like, I said exactly what you wanted me to say. What are you talking about? And they're like, well, you probably said it in some way that like pissed them off. And I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? And it really like felt like this ultimate betrayal. Cause I'm like, bro, I was like a sacrificial lamb for you guys.
Yeah.
And now you're mad because like it made you look kind of bad, but I'm the one that's getting the worst of it. You know what I mean? It was like that was like honestly like the most, I think, probably PTSD thing that I have from the military period. Cause I was like, dude, I did this for you guys. And now you're mad at me because it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. Like you knew it was going to happen. That's why you didn't do it, So anyway, I really felt like, gosh, dude, I can't even depend on my friends, like for some of like the backup and support. So that was really hard because I was like, now I don't really know. And honestly, like to the point with like the leaderships I was doing, I'm like, dude, if something happens, like you're gonna get fired. Like this isn't like this is no hindsight's 2020 thing. Like you will get fired. Like if there will be an investigation and you will get fired. Like you need to stop doing what you're doing, bro. Like you need to come. Like you need to get, you know. Um, but anyway, so that was kind of my like kind of courage and cowardice moment where I was just like, you know, what will I be willing to pay to make a sacrifice that I think is important to me, you know? And I think kind of back to the fear thing is like if your fear is bigger than your purpose, you know, a lot of times people will back out of things, right? You know, versus if your purpose is bigger than your fear, then you'll push through. And that's why you see people doing, you know, their courage can be, you know, manifest in so many different ways. I mean, combat's is an easy one, you know, but there's people that do things like, I mean, some pastors, right, or other people politically, right, they make a stance, publicly stance, right, and they get ostracized or canceled, right, or you know, they're willing to risk things, their money, reputation, job for a purpose, you know, and that takes courage, especially because you can think you understand the costs, but you don't until it happens to you, and you're like, wow, that was worse, you know, that was a lot, you know.
Truly, the courage of conviction.
Yeah.
I have a client, or I used to have clients that I worked with that were, they literally had this like, celebration and like worshiping this little god, this little statue in their house, and they would like pray, and they had like candles and stuff. And this is during COVID when I was training people at home, and it was very much my conscience was pricked, and knowing that I'm the sole breadwinner, my wife's having a baby, and there's so truly this business
It's client matters, right?
it's client matters, yeah, truly. And so you're like, oh man, this is I'm feeding my family, and like not having tons of abundance and clients where it would be easy to just kind of brush it. But I was to the point where I was convicted, which talking about, I was reference pain and conviction. They're two. So the pain is a gift. Pain is your body telling you, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. Your conscience is also a gift. If it's pricked and you have a conviction about something, you truly should be listening to it. Oh, I probably shouldn't do this thing. So I was convicted and told him, look, like this is fake. Like this is a fake God. Like you're praying to this pagan idol, and like you need to read the Bible. Like you don't know. Like you could walk out of your house and get hit by a car. Like you could die, and this is truly where you're. Like this is important. This is of the utmost urgency. You need to focus on that. Anyway, the next day they
fired you.
Yeah, next day I was fired. But reflecting on that, what your story with conviction unfortunately didn't work out well for you. But
it still did. Honestly, I think that's the thing. It's like,
really, it did.
Well, not so much in the. Well, one, I deep down, like I knew some people respected me for it, despite the like momentary. You know, it's like sometimes like they're mad about the immediate consequences, but really it did kind of change some things. It got better a little bit, and overall people I think respected me more for it, you know. And I think again, like back to the courage of convictions, like if you do it, especially if it's something important to you, like a real conviction, not like these kind of hazy ideas. And that's why I think, especially for like young men, especially young Christian men, is to understand biblical convictions and what's important, because then you have lines in the sand. And you're like, okay, I'm not crossing this line.
As far as like, what's to die on the hill? You mean?
Yeah, like so it's not just like these immediate, like I don't know, is this like I don't know if this is important or not, or I'm kind of confused. Like really thinking about these things, and that was kind of what that experience did for me. It forced me into a kind of a pressure cooker of emotions and confusion, and it gave me that opportunity to be clear about some things that are really important to me. But yeah, that I think you will always regret, and this is where it's funny because you think you're giving up something, but you're always getting something. Because if you don't, you'll regret it and you'll feel weaker, and maybe it'll start tearing down at your foundations of what you're
truly.
But if you hold those lines for yourself, you'll build up those convictions, and they'll be upheld, and you'll see later in your life that it was worth it. And it'll give you more courage later to be like, okay, I had this little fight, and I got fired, but so what? Like I stood with Christ, or and I was willing to make a sacrifice, and I married a woman who knew that I was going to be persecuted in the world. I mean, Christ promises you persecution if you follow him, and it happened, right? And you're like, oh, and then one, it's almost even like an opposite thing too. You're like, okay, every time something like when Christ says, if you're persecuted in the world, like rejoice, you know. And that's tough, right? I mean, it's easy to say and easy to read, but like realistically,
It is tough.
it's not
That's
easy,
the
right?
thing. It is tough.
Yeah, it's very tough, and I think you shouldn't minimize like the sacrifice that people make. And again, it's easy to be like, well, good for you, you got persecuted, rejoice, brother. But so again, that's a like empathy and accountability thing where it's like, Brett, I'm proud that you stood your ground and you were willing to make that sacrifice, But I also understand that wasn't easy and it hurt you and it was scary, and especially because it's not just you, right? And I think that's also really helpful as a man. I think, and this is kind of where for me, like my own sacrifices, if they matter to other people, then it's easier for me to hold my line. And I think that's probably where accountability and fellowship comes in, because
Hmm.
when it's just about me, it's my walls are pretty thin.
Yeah.
Like I don't care so much if I get hurt or if I make sometimes questionable decisions because I'm not hurting other people.
Right.
But like when you're defending other people, or in your case where it's like, wow, if I lose my job, my family might suffer. How do I balance that? So the willingness to make those good decisions, it's a lot, and I think it's important for men to think about those questions and be willing to think about what it would cost them to make some of those sacrifices, because I know a lot of pastors, like during COVID, were like, and again, it's at different times. We're like, all right, we'll follow the rules. And later it was like, hey, this is like, they have strip clubs up and down the street, but I can't have my church open. Like, okay, maybe it's time to put some of myself out there, right? I know some pastors even like did get arrested. I think like in Canada, especially in some other places where,
Yep.
but willingness to like, okay, I'm going to do it, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to put it out there, right? I'm going to be an example, especially I think men in leadership positions are the ones that need to take those risks, right? And so, but yeah.
Truly, courage transcends all cultures, all demographics. People respect it.
Yeah.
Just the courage to stand up for something that's bigger than yourself. Go to war. You have this experience of a lot of highs of the courage. You have the lows of just the betrayal, and you have this entire eclectic experience, and you truly see the fall of man. So at this time, you're an atheist, right?
Yep.
You're
The whole time.
So atheist. So talk to me about what was that like? When did it change for you?
So I think the hard part again about, and then it really just kind of goes back to the pain. Like I could probably sum up like pain with purpose is fairly easy. That's but pain without purpose is pretty hard, right? And so my life had been this quest for purpose, essentially. Now that I understand it, I was confused when I was younger, right? And the world kept offering me purpose through sports or academics or success or financial success or dating a hot girl or whatever it was, right? Or being a SEAL. But ultimately, a lot of those purposes they didn't have a foundation. And a lot of times when they were tested, the foundation's cracked. It's like for example, some of the guys in the teams, just what were we supposed to do, or some lawyer. I also found out, some of the guys in the teams ended up like cheating on their wives, and that was rough. And then they also cheat on their wives with some of the other guys' teams, which is supposed to be a big no and black eye. And you're like, where's the loyalty? Where's the brotherhood? Where's where's this golden pasture of people who exist, right? And I couldn't find it anywhere. Same with the Air Force Academy. One of the reasons I left the Air Force Academy because supposedly there's a lot of elite people there. A lot of people have like super. I mean, I barely scraped in with my GPA and my SAT, especially after I dropped out of high school and then went back and had to do it fast. But like my roommate had a perfect score on the SAT, and he double majored in mathematics and I think astrophysics. So pretty smart guy, right? But at the same time, I was never not disappointed with people, and I think that's another thing why probably the whole thing with sports. Every time I met someone who was amazing, like when I was 16, I went to the U.S. Open for swimming, and I swam at the time a world record holder, and he kicked my butt because he was an older guy, but he was just a guy, and I think it's like that saying, never meet your heroes.
Never
right?
meet your heroes. Yeah.
It's like we're all just people, and and I think it was just amazing. Like I just saw so many flaws in myself and other people forever, right? And that happened to teams too. So. And I think especially after some of the relationships I experienced in the team, and I saw, I was like, oh man, like again, my pain was still pretty high. It was actually even worse because I got injured and I found out I had a disease that was actually causing a lot of my symptoms.
How'd you get injured?
I fell out of a helicopter, which I kind of had a compression fracture in my spine.
You fell, hit your back. How far was
legs? I did like legs hip up. It was like 15, 20 feet. I'm not exactly sure, but it was onto a metal deck of a ship. It was, we were doing a training thing, and the pilots were also training. So, you've probably seen that thing where guys called fast roping, but they just grab the
Hmm.
rope and they slide down. Um, it's like the guy who broke his back in Black Block Act On, the guy who fell. That was basically me. But so I was the guy at Hearst Castmaster, so I was sitting everybody out, so I was the last one in. And I think the pilot thought that I wasn't going, so he kind of moved, and I basically lunged and I grabbed the rope, and all it did was like swing me up and out. So now I was like back down, and then I fell kind of like right on my like butt, and back, and then head, and it was kind of like a NASCAR accident. My helmet broke off. My nods broke off my helmet. My gun, we used like lasers and flashlights and a scope. All of it blew off, but we used baling wire to tie them on in case they fall off while we're on aquatic missions. So it was like, it broke, but it all stayed kind of together. But everything just blew off me. So, and I got up and I kept going. And I kept going for a while. And it was really like, it took me, I went to like medical a little bit afterwards, but I was starting to have problems like with my back and my walk. And they kept telling me there was nothing wrong with me, which is kind of standard medical procedure for the Navy, like, you know. So I was like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. Jeez, I'm just a wuss. That was really what I did. Like I just internalized it, and I think a lot of team guys do this, where they think that their pain isn't that bad, and they should suck it up, right? And a lot of guys like me just do it until you're like you literally can't do it anymore. There's kind of it's like imagine if you have a check engine light and you put tape over it and like problem solved, but eventually your car is going to blow up if you don't change your oil, right? So um and a lot of injuries accumulate, and so it just made it hard for me to perform. But yeah, so anyway, I was an atheist through all that, and so as things got harder and harder for me, and my physical symptoms getting older, seeing scars of relationships, seeing the brokenness, and again, like the whole thing in the world was infecting the Navy as well. So the leadership wasn't making good decisions. DEI became, I mean, I remember thinking it was time for me to get out when I saw a statement about from someone high up was like, we've been overly focused on mission success, and we need to focus now on promoting females and people of diversity to leadership positions.
We've been focused on mission
Too
success,
much.
and now we need to go.
Yeah.
We need to get away from mission success.
Yeah. And I was like, that's scary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really scary. So, and they build a new facility down in IB,
Hmm.
and every single building has like a lactate station in it, right? And the SEALs are still 100% male, right? There, none of our facilities
Like
have,
you mean like
yeah, like
breastfeeding?
a room where you can go and breastfeed for your baby, right? Which
Is it for the wives? Is it for?
no, it's for
It's for future
it's for
female.
females, right? It's basically that we're like pro working mothers, right? Which again is like,
What do you think about that? Women being in the Navy, women being the team specifically. I've heard a few guys mention things.
so I think the SEALs specifically, it's just bad. It's bad for the team. So I think the thing about it is like women have lots to offer in different ways, right? But it's the same. It's the same with like again with the DII in general. It's like, are these people coming to solve a problem? Are they there to enrich and make? Are they there to make like? Are women generally going to make the SEAL teams better? Absolutely not. And again, people like to focus on buds. Like, can you find a woman somewhere to make it through buds? Probably, right? Maybe, I don't know, right? Especially if they continually change the standards, what they're doing, right? And when a female makes it, she'll probably get completely different treatment and get multiple chances and blah blah, and she'll make it, right? And even if there's a girl out there that can totally crush it, right? The thing about it is, it's not about making it through buds. Like, it's about doing a job. It's like when we were in Afghanistan, for example, or Iraq. Like in Iraq, like we were embedded with. So basically, we were wearing black uniforms and we had matte black vehicles because we weren't advertising that we're Americans, and we were working with Iraqi special forces, right? And we were driving with them in a moving front line from Baghdad towards Mosul, right? And there are zero women, and there's groups of army out there that there's part of like Shia militia groups that hate Americans, right? And this is like a Muslim country where it's like, and we were driving and there's like combat going on. We move up, we take over a compound. The compound's been bombed out. There's no air conditioner. There's some holes around bathrooms, but like guys are peeing in bottles. You're pooping in bags sometimes. Like there's just no real place for a woman to be comfortable, right? And you will always have to make sacrifices or change things for females. Like a lot of our ranges somewhere, like there's no bathrooms. You just run off and pee in the woods, right? And it's like where you're gonna have to, they're literally building female facility, which there's nothing wrong with doing some of that, but the thing is, like, there's also like the fact that some of our weapons haven't been upgraded in 20 years, right? Like, so now you're spending millions of dollars building new buildings and putting these things in, because it's every building everywhere. I think in the Navy has to have one now. It's like a new rule, right? So, and you're gonna build facilities for women we don't even have, and the guys who are, need new equipment aren't getting it. So it's like, that's part of the problem. It's like, are we getting something from women being added, or are we taking it away? I also, like, fundamentally, that was more of my atheistic worldview, was just like, are they adding something? Because the real thing is, like, it's like a feminist thing. It's like, I want to prove that women can do this. Versus, like, I want to be part of a team and defend America and be an asset. Like, if that's your goal, great. I don't know how it works out exactly, but at least that's the right goal, right? But the intention is never that. It's just like, we need to basically infiltrate these organizations and prove that, like, we're just as good or better. And it's like, that's divisive in its nature. It's not helpful. And as I've changed to more of a Christian worldview, it's just like, I don't want. I mean, actually, it was really funny. Even as an atheist, like, part of the reason I joined the team is, like, I don't want my sister to do this. I don't want my sister to go to war, and I also didn't want my sister to be part of a Muslim country.
Yeah.
As an atheist, I was like, I wasn't pro Christianity either, but I was just like, if I have to choose, I'd rather have her be in a Christian nation, essentially, So, but now I'm just like, why? If you love a woman, like, if you love a man, honestly, if you love a man, like, you wouldn't want them to be a SEAL either. Like, you understand it's necessary and you respect it, but realistically, like, you don't want people to have to go to war. Like,
Yeah.
and I definitely don't want that for any female, right? It's not about, like, for me, fundamentally, one, I don't think she was designed to do that. Two, it's not good for people to go to war, period, right? And if you love a woman, you don't want her to have to go there. You want to protect her from that thing. And that's, again, it's not to say women have no place helping out, or that. I think it's so stupid when people are like, just because you could doesn't mean you should, right? And it's like, just because you can, like there's so many great, and I think with women, again, it's like, or men and women, and we have black, white, we have all these polar ideas about, like, oh, if you're this, you're that, right? Versus, like, if you can do, I can't be a mother. I can't even be a lot of things that other women can do outside of motherhood, right? Like, I'm not built that way. I was sort of designed to be a soldier. I'm a big person who, had some savage blood in me and was, like, willing to be in those environments, right? Like, it's what I was designed to do, right? And not all men are designed to do that either. So I just think it's absolutely silly and sad that you would want women in combat, And I think it's only because women, again, they don't understand, especially, like, kind of the feminist liberal movement in America that wants women to do everything that men do. It's like, do you really want women on an oil rig? Like, you know what I mean? It's just rough, and it's hard, and it hurts you, and it tears you down, and it's,
How do you go to the bathroom?
yeah, and it's gross. It's just like, and people are mean in those environments. Like, we're mean to each other because, like, you're stressed. Like, it's not like you are managing massive amounts of stress. And you think about it, when people are on a car trip, again, with their family, things get a little loud, the radio's annoying, the kids are crying, like, or on an airplane, you start getting tension. Now imagine doing that for 5 months with no air conditioning, it's 120 degrees, and people are shooting rockets at you, and people are having differences of opinion. It starts getting pretty rough, So, anyway, and it's violent. I think another thing, people just don't appreciate, like, violence. Like, it is it is a violent community, and when you are at war, you are in a mindset of kill or be killed a little bit, right? And when you have people who are weak around you, right? I mean, the guys get beat up, guys get thrown out of the teams, it can be pretty vicious. So it's just, again, it's not an environment I think women should be in.
Yeah.
They do have things like FBI, or some other people have, like, organizations where it's all female kind of tactical unit, specifically designed sometimes with female stuff, or, they just don't have to go through the same kind of training, but they're still able to sometimes, like, support us. Like, sometimes they would come and I never directly work with them, but I know they'd support operations and dealing with certain aspects of, sometimes even corralling the women, in Afghanistan or some of these places. They don't want men to touch their women, so they would have women handle them and stuff. So again, it's not, you can't have support sometimes. But anyway, I probably talked a lot about that, but I just don't think it's good for women, period. And I don't think it's good for the teams, either one. So I think it's bad for both, and it should probably be separate. But
yeah, truly. So back on the atheist
Christian thing. Yeah, try to stay on track.
Yeah.
Basically, so after it was right around COVID, right? So I've been experiencing a whole bunch of chronic pain. At this point, I was undiagnosed with my back being.
They said nothing was wrong.
Nothing was
wrong. Put the tape over the check engine light.
Nothing wrong, right? So I'm like, all right, I guess I'm just a weak person. I'm just pathetic now. We're getting older, right? And so, I actually was trying to, like, find a new hobby because I used to race motorcycles. I'm like, all right, well, I'm getting older. I'm gonna have to get out of the teams. Like, I started trying to play tennis, which turns out it's not great for your back or hips, but I started playing tennis a little bit, and I was playing with a guy who was a little older than me. He was like 42 or something.
Is that Co?
No, this is a guy. I just met him at like a tennis thing. At the time, I think I was like 30, 38, maybe 37. I don't know. Well, it was like COVID, pre-COVID, so it was like anyway. But I was playing with him, and he's like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna stop. My knee's starting to hurt me." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like you're 42? Like doesn't your whole body hurt?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" Because he was on the military, some guy. And it's like, I was like, "You're old. Like your whole body doesn't hurt all the time." He's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "What are you talking?" Because everybody I know has like chronic pain, like in the teams, like. And I was like, "You're telling me your body doesn't hurt?" And he's like, "No." And I was like, "Whoa!" I'm like, I need a second opinion. Like I'm dying. There's something seriously wrong with me. So fortunately, my brother actually found out that he had this disease called hereditary hematomacrosis. It's like iron overload. So basically, my body doesn't process iron. Some people think it's like they also call it like the iron fist, but it was like a Viking thing maybe because like they bled so much that they actually got used to holding on to iron, which I don't know if that's true. Now I think it just makes it sound the disease is a little more sexy than it is, but it can cause like liver failure, heart failure, cause like iron depositing in your joints, cause joint pain. It can depression symptoms, a whole bunch of like all kinds of stuff. And so my brother found out he had it, and he's like, "Dude, it's hereditary. I think you have it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I got tested. It found out I did have that. So it took a year and a half of giving blood every 2 weeks to get my iron levels down. So I was basically like anemic. I wasn't because I had iron in my system, but I was just giving blood, giving blood, giving blood. And it turned out like my dad's dad died at 52 of liver failure, and they didn't know why. His brother died at like 60 because of out of a heart attack. And it turns out all these men on my father's side have been dying early because of this disease that they didn't know about. So at that point, I was basically like, all right, I have this disease, I have all this pain. And I thought the chronic pain I was experiencing was from the disease. So I didn't know at the time. It turns out later, after I did like a year and a half of bloodletting, that I was still in a lot of pain. And I was finally able to get some MRIs. It turned out I had all kinds of problems. But anyway, during COVID.
At this point, did you ever consider like, you're like, oh man, I need to get like an exorcism or something?
No, but I did think I did like desperately need a bigger answer. Now the teams weren't enough, right? So like
Right.
it was 100% like the teams aren't enough for me. I need a new purpose, right? And actually during COVID, I started doing, because part of it, I went to like a pain clinic and they actually recommended meditation.
Okay.
And I started doing meditation. At the beginning, it was very like non-spiritual meditation in the beginning, but it started to have some positive effects for me. So I actually during COVID, much like your idol worshiping friend, I actually had a Buddha statue in my house. I was listening to candles, and I started meditating a lot, like hours a day during COVID, because for some of us we weren't allowed to go to work, and I started fasting a lot. And anyway, so I was doing that a lot, and I was really investigating like what is truth. So I really got stuck on this one thing. It was like, and also I was really seriously considering killing myself. Not in a reactive way, but it's like if I can't find meaning in the world, like if it's true that there is no meaning, it's just a materialistic thing, like there's no point for me to be alive. Like I did some stuff, I had some experiences, like my bucket list is checked off mostly, like, and now I'm just a broken old man. Like it's just gonna get worse. So there's no point. And I think that's one of the hardest things about our current culture is that there are no answers, right? There's nothing for people to hold on to, and they have flimsy things like, oh, be this or be that or try this, do that, and they get there, they don't make it, and then it's just like, okay, I'm rich now. So I mean, I remember I had a condo in San Diego. I was a Navy SEAL, had a Ducati, and I'm sitting there like yeah, I guess I could get a nicer house and I could try to make more money, but it's like I have some nice stuff. Like what? But none of it matters. And so I started questioning. The question I started asking myself was, why do I feel like I'm right? And why does everybody think they're right? And why, like, can we be wrong and right at the same time? Or why does everybody seem like they're wrong? Like, why is everybody so sure that they're right? And really kind of create this paradox of perspective and truth for me. It was like, if truth is relative and it's not really truth, right? So, and eventually I realized that like truth is truth, but like what happens is, from a personal perspective point of view, right? You experience a very narrow part of the world, and and you have what your senses experience through you, and then your interpretations of those things, right? And that creates a very narrow, very small, very flawed view of reality, right? And so what you're focusing on kind of creates the reality that you experience, right? And along with your ideas and other things like that. So I realized that everybody has this perspective, that's real for them, much like a hallucination. Like if someone is hallucinating, like that's real to them, even though it's not real in reality, right? And so, and someone else, I was like, what if everybody's wrong, not because they're really wrong, but because they have such a limited perspective and they don't understand that, right? And I was like, if you and I are looking at white snow, and I have blue lenses on, and you have pink lenses on, or red lenses on, could do pink and I mean red and blue for the Democrats and Republicans. But if you're looking at white snow, you're always going to see red, and I'm always going to see blue. But one, the snow is white, so we're all wrong. But like what you're experiencing is true to you, and you have to react to what you're experiencing, or else it's like.
Right. So you go through this, and then you, at what point you're reading the
So
Bible?
no, at this
You
point
meditate.
I was 100% done with Christianity. I didn't even investigate it. I just thought it was dumb. Like a lot of like I just wrote off like so many other people do without much inquiry into it at all. And I had very skewed and bizarre and wrong limited versions of Christianity, right? And I'd also met a lot of Christians that I thought like again like the argument a lot of them are hypocrites or whatever. So I wrote off. At this point I was just pursuing, and I almost became a prude of Buddhism because he said, basically it's short version, kind of the Americanized version, but desire causes suffering. Like life is suffering, and our desires cause suffering, right? And we all experience this suffering. And there's a way to be like liberated. So I was like, either Buddha is like the most other depressed guy in history, or he's onto something. And so I really started doing this like, and Buddhism really isn't a religion, at least not a lot of people make
Right.
one. But anyway, so I started meditating a lot, and I got this point where I was starting to feel like I was becoming clear and understanding things, and I was giving up things. It was actually really interesting because at that point I'd been doing some things that were bad that are actually turned out to be quite sinful, and I started giving them up and I felt better about that, and I kind of was isolating myself and turning away from some of the ugly parts of the SEAL community and drinking and rowdiness and kind of the biker gang kind of underbelly that sometimes is there. And but anyway, at one point I realized like this doesn't really none of this explains why we exist, right? There's no answer to. It's just like it says basically we reincarnate, and eventually if you get it right you can go to nirvana. But like, why did that happen? Why are we here? What's the purpose of doing that? It doesn't like. So it kind of like fell apart when I got to the big side parts of it. So practically I felt like it was helping a little bit, but ultimately it wasn't. And so then it kind of felt like a little bit of a band-aid for my soul. But then I had this really, I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but I had a really like wild experience where I was meditating, and it felt like I had this option to some degree where I could either experience truth, but I would have to like literally die. It felt like I was going to have to die. It was like all the things that I learned up until this point in my life had become this like dagger in my mind as I'm sitting there meditating, kind of this like meditative experience. That everything that I had learned my whole life had crystallized into sort of this dagger, and it was like truth. And if I wanted to know the truth, I would basically have to give up everything that I am, and basically, kind of stab myself with it, and to be willing to die, to give up everything to know truth. And it was terrifying. Like it was just bizarrely frightening for me, and I truly felt like I was going to die. But I was like, okay, right. And I had this experience, so I mentally, stabbed myself with the truth, and I the first thing I thought was a word. And I had this like almost compelling sense of like if you want to know the truth, you have to say this word. And I was like, I just thought I was going crazy, honestly. And because the word in my head was Christ. And I was like, what is happening? Like, no. And I didn't want to say it. Like I didn't want to say the word because I was like, I didn't want that to be the truth. It was really and so but I was like, I'm like, basically inside I was like, okay, like Christ. But it scared me, and I felt such a hypocrite because I talked such bad about Christianity. I thought it was dumb, and I didn't understand it. And how could how could Christ have anything to do with the truth? And I'd even use parts of the Bible, like Leviticus, like so many atheists do, to like make fun of Christianity and like, oh, God doesn't want you to eat shrimp or, do whatever, these things, right? And then, so I said the word, and then I had this like terrifying experience. I was just scared. And it's funny, like again, the Bible's like, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I was like, I never felt so small and so weak. And it was like, for the first time, like I saw myself as a man. Like this guy, this little man was with weak skin that'll turn to butter if I like fall down on a sidewalk, just rip open. And all this strength that I'd built up in this image of my mind of like being a SEAL or even being kind of tough. It was just like, I can get hit by a bus. Like a small child can hit me with a bat and kill me. I'm not tough. I didn't get stronger. It was all sort of like a narrative and a lie. Like same thing with I think some of like the worship of people and gurus, and there's this narrative and a story. But when you really get close to anybody, they're just a person. And they go to the bathroom and they get sick and they get diarrhea and they're going to get old and die. And the most beautiful woman in the world is just going to get old and rot and die. And it was just like, I felt so human, and it was horrible, and I also felt like if God is real, like, and for the first time I thought of God, not as like the way I wanted him to be, but like, what if God was like a God that created all of the universe and created me and wanted me to do things, and my whole life I ignored him and did things wrong. I didn't care. And I was just this arrogant person who thought I could understand the creator of the universe, right? Because it made it clear to me that I was holding a thimble by the ocean, and I took a sip of it and I looked at it and I was like, I understand the ocean and everything in it and how it exists and all. And that was like, how could a man?
This is all while you're meditating.
Yeah, this is like now I'm just like shell shocked, sitting in my apartment, like literally fearing. I was on my knees, like afraid, like I thought God was gonna kill me. I was like, oh my God, if you're real, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. Because like if you're real, then I'm a sinner and I deserve to die and I'm gonna go to hell. And I was like, I deserve to go to hell. I like knew I deserved to go to hell. And this, I guess, like the word repentance, I didn't know any of these real words, but I was like, and then I was just thinking about the times, like, and it was like the shell that I created of me being a pretty good person, which again, now that I've been on the other side, I see people when I've tried to talk to them about like, do you think you're a good person? They're like, well, I'm like, have you lied? Have you cheated? Have you done this? Right? You stole things from your kid? Like whatever. Like, yeah. You're like, okay, well, does that make you a good person? You're like, maybe compared to the people that but the standards that we have are like, the funny thing about the Ten Commandments is like not being a liar and a cheater and some other things doesn't make you, and not being a murderer doesn't make you a good person. It makes you like not being a bad person. It's like the bare minimum of what it, like, So anyway, I had this sense of like, but even my good deeds were hollow. And again, it's like what the Bible says, like if you're not doing it for God, like it just turns out to be evil and selfish. Like you can even give your body to be burned, and if you don't have love, it's like nothing, right? But I just realized that everything I had done was for me. And even when I tried to be good, I couldn't do it because like I was just, my motivations were wrong, and I couldn't escape my own selfishness, no matter how good I wanted to be or even try to. Which again kind of comes back to the Bible, exactly how it describes it, of like you're either a slave to Christ or a slave to sin. Like your sin controls you, and you're dead in your sins or you're not, right? And you, no matter how you twist it or do it, like you're always the sin based. And you see it in our politics, right? You see it in organizations. Saw it in the military. Saw it with SEAL. Saw it everywhere. Like, why can't we have a good system? We have enough stuff. We have enough money. Like, we could do it. We can't. Why? Because people are corrupt, and you can have the best system you want, but if corrupt people are running it, it'll always fall apart. And that just happens again and again, not just in our society now, but everywhere. So anyway, I was.
Yes. What'd you do? What'd you do after?
So I was terrified. I was scared. I spent like an hour in my shower, basically on my knees, like naked. And I felt like I felt disgusting. Honestly, I felt absolutely like a disgusting thing. And I was scared out of my mind. And that's when I called Ko, my buddy, because I've been kind of like updating him on my meditative journey. And I was like, dude, I think I'm a Christian right now. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm so messed up. I'm so scared. And I just felt like I felt like I'm absolutely going crazy. Because like this, I just like couldn't understand how this could be true. And he's like laughing at me, making fun of me and like joking around or whatever. But he called his friend Paul,
Oh yeah.
Paul Pasialis.
Oh yeah. PP.
We go to dinner. I kind of share some of this stuff. He probably just thinks I'm a crazy person too. But he's like, dude, I think you might have gotten saved. And I was like, what are you talking about? And at that point, I didn't understand being born again. I didn't understand being saved. Because I just thought it was fake. Like people say they have faith. Like I didn't understand that. Like, I mean, the Bible describes it like you're born again. God gives you a new heart. Like he will give you a new spirit and he'll make you fear him. And I'm like, what the heck? Right. So I'm like, and he gives me a Bible. Right. And I probably just look like, again, I was like, I'm still doing my blood therapy. I was like 180 pounds. I'd lost so much. Like, now I'm like 250.
You're like gaunt.
Like I was pale. I hadn't left my house. Just been meditating and fasting.
Yeah. I remember on that point, I remember talking to Paul. So I remember the first day you came to Barabbas, you showed up late. I was outside working security and you came up and I was, and because Ko came and he was like, hey,
to the wrong church.
Yeah. You went to the wrong church. And you were like, I was like, hey, are you David? You're like, yeah. And we were outside talking a bit and like and Paul told me that you were coming and he told me about meeting you before when you were like a
Psycho.
serious
Yeah,
atheist psycho,
yeah,
and then like meeting with you after the
yeah,
fact. And he was like, and Paul's a person, Paul's a pretty grounded
yeah.
guy.
He's
He
very,
doesn't get excited about
he's
anything.
very right here. Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so he gives you a Bible and
He
you're,
gives me a Bible, told me to read it, and told me to come to church. And I went home and I just started reading it aggressively. And I was like,
where'd you start? What'd you do?
Genesis, which is which I'm not sure I'd recommend for everybody. But part of me was like, it's a book, because I was like confused. Some people were like, I was looking on like Bible, but I was like, it's a book. Let's just read it like from the beginning. You know,
Yep.
I didn't realize there were a bunch of different books at the time, but
Yeah.
the point was I was like, let's just start at the beginning. And uh, so I spent it probably took like 2 months to get through the whole thing. Um, I mean, I spent all day like
That is the 90 day. So the 90-day Bible reading plan, which
yeah,
is literally what you did in 6 months, which is more. It's like the reading. It's like hours.
oh
It's
yeah,
like it is
oh
like
yeah. I mean,
it's
that was
like
like
60 chapters a day or something.
yeah, no, it was all I mean, hours a day, like 9 hours a day. You know what I mean? And then watching
Wow.
sermons. Well, because I mean, for me, it was like, if this is true, like the implications. Again, I think like people don't understand the implications. Again, it's like how people argue in the world today. It's like if you say that morality is relative, the implications of that are massive. It's not just like, oh, me and you can disagree a little bit about what should be legal or what's right or wrong. It means that like morality is completely real. There's no way to have a standard, and therefore we can't judge it, right? Etc. I mean, it's deeper than that, but I'll try to stick with my side of it. So, but anyway, so yeah, I started reading the Bible,
Two
started
months. Finished it.
praying, and I was like, again, I was like shell shocked at this point. I was just like, I had this, which again was nice because I went and talked to Pastor Paul eventually, to talk about my experience, and he talked about the brokenness of a Christian, right? And I was like,
That's Paul's man.
because I was like,
Paul.
he's like, he even used that. He's like, do you have a sense of brokenness? And I was like, yes. I feel shattered. You know, like I feel, and so but I felt weak. I didn't know how to go in the world. I didn't know how to talk to the people I knew. And so I just kept reading. I was listening to books. It's actually funny because I listen to a lot of John MacArthur, but also John Piper.
Yep.
Kind of back to Paul and me, probably good examples. Like there was a thing I saw of John Piper and John MacArthur where John MacArthur was talking about, he's like, Piper was talking about how he had like 3 years of depression and was going to Merritt County and had these deep, dark periods. And he like asked John, he's like, John MacArthur, he's like, well, sometimes I have some pretty, you know, sometimes I have like a bad morning, but I'll get over it pretty quick. And John Piper was just like, he's like, good night. And he's like, that's it. Like, and I feel like Paul, like, because I have these crazy struggles, I'm all over the place. And Paul's just, anyway, so at that point, I actually called my sister at one point during this, and because I knew she was living a worldly life and she was drinking a lot, and I was kind of worried she might be like an undercover alcoholic. And I called her, and I probably gave her the most aggressive gospel thing you could presentation ever. Like, Laura, listen, like, I don't know, like, and she's like, oh, cool. Because I told him, like, I think I believe in God. And she's like, oh, cool. I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. She's like, yeah, I go to church sometimes. But like, you know, I'm like, not like, Laura, no, you don't. I know you don't believe in God. Like, because if you believe in God, you would change. Like, this is not what I'm talking about. Like, and I'm like, and I like, was basically, I was talking about Bible verses with her and really harsh ones too. You know, like the ones that people, you know, just about like, for example, like the idea that like you can call Jesus Lord, but if you know, like, why do you call me Lord if you don't do the things I say, right? Like the idea that like if you're not following me for real, like it doesn't matter what you say, right? And there's a broad path, and there's an easy path, and like most people are on the broad path that leads to destruction. There's a narrow path, and like I'm like, by your actions, I know that you're on the broad path, as I have been. And I'm like, if there's any chance at all, Lord, I'm like, I know you can't stop drinking, I know you're partying, I know like all, and I just started like hammering her with like all these things, right? And she's like crying and like. And I'm like, if you think there's any chance that God is real or you ever believe him, I'm like, go in your closet right now, like, or just get on your knees as soon as I'm like off the phone with you and pray to God that he'll save you. Right. She called me back like a few days later and she's like, I think I got saved too or whatever. And I was like, I don't know about this. But then she started going to church. And she started going to like basically a prosperity church. It was kind of weird. And like the youth minister was trying to hit on her. It was very exciting. I'm like, Lord, you can't go to that church.
She's married now, right?
Yeah, so then she went to the Philly church that I was telling you about, and started going there. And they have very strong elders, and like we're very very involved with her, and really coached her. And she's been there for 5 years now. And so she recently got married, you know, and they kind of like her being married was, the church was involved, and the elders were involved with her and the husband and preparing them for biblical marriage, and she's changed. I mean, she's changed more than I have. I mean, she really has. And part of it, I think, is that she's been able to be stable in fellowship, and I've been kind of all over the place and think I'm moving and trying to get out of this. But that's excuses on my part. But she really has, like, she's probably more mature as a Christian than I am now, but she's pregnant. So, sometimes I think that if I never get to be part of anybody else's ever conversion ever, that was, enough, it's like have you heard the starfish story?
Oh yeah, the star. Yeah, it meant
All the starfishes on the beach, and
it meant something to that one.
yeah, it meant
Yeah,
something to this one. So I'm like,
yeah,
and that's really kind of where I'm at now with my life, where it's like, I feel so useless. I'm like a beat up old seal. I got chronic pain. Like mentally, I'm not as sharp as I used to be. My body is on the decline. Like I don't know what I offer people anymore, and so, but I feel like, okay, like if I can, hopefully after surgery I'll be able to do a little more. But if I can, like this, if there's some person that listens to this and they get some inspiration, or maybe it's because they have a brother like me who was just a crazy atheist who hated God forever, and it's just like, you never know, you don't have to give up on hope on people that seem. And actually, I think maybe being more lost is better than being less lost, because then you need it, you need salvation, and so it's like Matt. I remember Matt telling a story about he prayed for his buddy, like, hey God,
Oh yeah, Nick, we've had him on.
like test him and take away all the good things in his life so he knows he needs you, whatever. And the guy's like, what kind of jerk is that? But then you realize it's like kind of the empathy versus accountability thing. It's like, I don't want you to be comfortable in your sin, brother. Dude, if this is true, that means you're going to hell.
Yeah,
And if you don't get saved, that's it for you. And your life is meaningless. So look at the world. I think it's also, I mean, there's the world we have now is almost a blessing, because if you read Romans, right? The transgender gay movement, because even when I was an atheist, like, why is the gay thing so celebrated? Like, just be gay. Like, who cares, And this is an atheist idea, but I was like, why do you have to, like, basically made it a gospel, right?
yeah,
I went to like a guy's birthday party who's gay, and they had the penis pops, and it's all sex and gayness, and it's like, because people need an identity.
yeah,
But all the identities of the world are hollow, and they all end, right? Well, you could be a celebrity, you can be this, but eventually you're an old man sitting on, or you die young even. But so you die, right? And I think we hide from death, we hide from truth, and but the world breaking like it is now, and people seeing what atheist offers, what it offers nothing, right? And it offers chaos and disillusionment and emptiness and brokenness, and and so I think for me it's just, and it hasn't been an easy journey for me. I still I suffer a lot. So in the Bible talks about suffering time as a gift, and there's times where I feel like it is a gift. There's times where I get pretty mad at God and like, what is the point of this? But I mean, when I'm clear and I'm being honest, like, again, it kind of goes back to the same motivation in my heart of being a SEAL. It's like, if there's something that God can use my suffering for, but the thing is, you have to go through the lesson of suffering to be able to be able to give that back to other people, or for God to use that, then I would rather suffer than someone else. Like, I would rather my sister get to have her marriage and have a child and have a blessed life, and me be the one that's like broken and alone, or so anyway, that's kind of where it comes down to with me. But yeah, it was, and my actual, my testimony is up and down and stuff, but it's just, but the idea that, and the funny is, I've looked so hard in the world. I went to the academy, and I have a little bit of a scientific background, and my dad was a physicist and a math guy, and it's so funny how many of the lies of the world, that the misunderstandings that people have about true Christianity, like biblical Christianity, the true God, like not the Jesus of your imagination or the transgender Jesus that I watched a church that has a transgender Jesus, or if God is who he says he is and Jesus is who he says he is, and the words of the Bible are true, right? And then like the implications of that are massive, and that there's truth. I mean, I think the thing is that you have truth and you can follow it. But I'll tell you what, it's definitely, every time I think I have some stability, or I understand things, like, there's the trials and there's the testing, and like Spurgeon said, your heart's an idol factory, and I do really feel like a kid, like, who's just crying and whining, and just, God, please just, help me. And it's funny though, but God has given me these insights where it's like, I want to give this advice to other people about, like, hey, your dad, because I'll meet young guys who's like, they're mad at their dad, right? And I'm like, your dad cares about you. He's working really hard. And again, the empathy, accountability thing, like, he's going to have to hold you accountable, and you're not going to be able to understand it, right? But just trust the process of you growing up, right? You're not going to be able to understand everything. Like, for me, hey, you can't understand a God who's created galaxies, man. Like you can't understand how he thinks because you can't barely tie your shoelaces some days, like you forget you need a GPS to drive home. Like you're not a genius that you thought you were.
David, all things considered, you're Navy SEAL. You've accomplished so much. You've lived the ways of the world, and here you are. And so, objectively, people think the stereotype of the Christian man is weak and effeminate, and a lot of this podcast is focused on showing what does it truly mean to be a man of God. And I mean, so much of that is what you talked about with the being broken, and here you are. You achieved all these things by worldly standards that would quote unquote make you a man, and here you are. And that's so. Do you ever solving that emptiness?
Yeah. Well, two things. I think one, I'll start with the man thing because I actually, have realized there's this sort of like loneliness epidemic against a man, and there's a lot of men like me right now. I'm 42 years old. I'm divorced, no children, and it's like again looking for purpose in the world, right? And even though I understand that God can use me as I am, I'm still looking for the worldly things to prop me up to say that I have value. So I think the biggest thing about being a man, I think it goes back to what you're talking about before, which is the courage of your convictions. Like I think if you're a man in the world today, especially if you're a Christian man, I mean, realistically, only if you're a Christian man, because everybody else, it's just they're only going to have false convictions anyway. But to deeply study the word, right, and to understand what Jesus said and what he wants you to do, right, and find potential, if you have the option to find mentors who seem to be able to live somewhat of a biblical life and biblical convictions in a modern world, because the modern world is terrible for everybody. We're so busy, we're so isolated, community is nearly impossible for most people. They work and they go home, and they're just separate, right? And even if you're married, you spend more time with work than you do with your children, your wife. So and everybody's struggling to fit in, and technology's changing so fast, so it's very difficult. I think it's probably it's always been difficult to live by biblical convictions, but I think America's probably been easier at some points. But anyway, my point is that to know what your convictions are before they're tested, I think. And then it's the ownership and accountability thing of standing by the choices that you make, and owning the consequences. I think that's really all it is. It's not about being strong. It's not about being going to war. I mean, whatever. It's like the Bible says. Like there is a war that you're facing. Any Christian man's in the war, and so understanding that your life is a war. There's persecution out there. That people hate you. I think another thing is like believe what the Bible says, and it's hard to. It's like every time I meet someone and they disappoint me, or recently I had some friends that I've been really helping out, and they just were just such bad people. They were using it's like the servant who gets forgiven, gets forgiven this huge debt, and he immediately goes out and chokes like someone for 10 cents, basically, right? And like I'm letting some guy live with me for cheap and helping him out and buying all stuff, and let him borrow money, and then he's basically trying to like blackmail and sue some people. I was just like, dude, why can't you just be good? Just be better, just be better than you are, and I feel like and I just realized that it's like I said, people don't want the truth. They don't want to be good. They want what they want, right? They're just sinners. And I think it's hard for me to believe. It's like what the Bible says, like, people are corrupt, and they're futile in their mind, and they're dark in their understanding. And you're like, I meet some guy and he seems pretty smart, but like once I dig in, it's true. There's always that point where they'll just reject truth. They'll reject, even if I use no biblical standards whatsoever, if I just try to understand their worldview and hold them accountable to the things that they're saying, they'll eventually come to a place where they know they're being a hypocrite, or they're lying about some truth, or they're trying to attack me because they don't want to. And it's just everywhere the sin, And so believe what the Bible says, build yourself up with convictions, and be willing to count the cost, like Jesus said, and I understand there is a cost. Like Jesus paid the price. The price is different than the cost. And I heard this recently in a sermon. I really liked it because I didn't always understand. Like if Jesus paid it all, then what's the cost that I'm paying? It's like, the price is what, like how much, like when I go to the store and I buy a new car, like I'm paying, the price is how much the customer is willing to pay for this thing. And it's massively more than the cost, It's probably still not a good analogy with Christ paying it all, but the idea is that me buying a $100,000 car or whatever, right, that cost $10,000 to make, you know what I mean? And Jesus paid everything for us. He paid the inflated price, the ultimate price. And our cost is just to follow and trust him. And really, not even really paid. Our cost is basically trusting that he paid it, and following him along the way, which again is more than most of us can do most of the time, but understand that. So yeah, to wrap it up, I would just say for anybody who's a Christian man in the world today, or it's just, yeah, I think you gotta read the word, and you gotta try to believe it, and it's hard sometimes, and we really don't, and I think it's really easy to get it twisted. We want to twist the word, we want to twist our motivations, um, and don't give up. I think that's another thing too. It's so I feel like such a failure so often, you know. And it's so funny when I talk to like teams and performance wise, like Kobe Bryant said this, like failure doesn't exist, right? Or I say failure is fertilizer, right? Like you fail, you grow, and you do it again. But when I fail in my personal pursuits, it doesn't. I don't feel the deep sense of failure that I feel when I failed as a Christian, And so I think, but trusting God that like He knows that you're gonna sin, He knows that you're not perfect, right? I'm not perfect, and keep going, keep walking that narrow path. I think that's really, and the word has more advice than any man, and so take that time to go to the source, before you also just listen to anybody. Because I think that one thing that probably helped me the most in my Christian journey was reading the Bible, because I read the Bible before I started going to church. Before I started going to churches and talking to Christian people, and there was a lot of things they gave me that was worldly advice, crazy advice, sometimes the opposite of the word. And again, all advice needs context, right? But so for me, I was protected somewhat from all this kind of stuff. People were giving me books that were loosely Christianese and stuff, and some of it was, very, there's a lot of feminist stuff, and there's a lot of even now embracing sin in the church, whether it's homosexuality or this or that. And so anyway, the Bible is your GPS. It's God's planning system. It's like you got to read it to know where you're going. And it's hard, and it's work. And
Amen. Whenever talking about gospel truths, preaching the gospel to yourself after you've been saved, after your conversion, what does that look like for you?
there's that's a great question, because I think, like so many things in our life, we want it to be one and done. I'm saved, I'm Christian now, good to go, back to the world, or back to me doing me, because I got Jesus on my side. A very shallow understanding. Again, a very shallow understanding of what sin is. And so I think the gospel is understanding, like, I think the more you see yourself, and the deeper you see yourself as a sinner and a failure. Because we really are a failure. Like, no one lives up to their convictions. It's like, Christians will fall into sin, they'll tell lies, like I'll look at women's and lust, and I'll just not want to do what God wants me to do, even though I know it's true, right? I still have this sense of rebellion in my heart, or it's almost like I like with my chronic pain sometimes, where I just feel like God's punishing me and God's mean, like I said, that little whiny child who's having a tantrum. But the point is that if the truth, like it says, it's like a lamp to your feet in the Bible, right? It is a guide for you. And so knowing that you are going to get confused, right? We're the sheep, he's a shepherd. And if you think about like a sheep analogy, they're just munching their grass, doing what they want, and they're just constantly going anywhere and not paying attention. So for me, every time I don't, like it says, put on the full armor of God, right? And put on like the gospel of peace, like you will get lost instantly. I feel like I even had an idea when I first got saved, where since like, okay, the cross is the truth, Christ is the truth, and I have to hold on to it. And anytime I let go of this, it's like a space astronaut going out in his little spacesuit with this little umbilical cord, and you're just out there in the world, and it's just there's no other North Star, there's no other beacon to find. It's just confusion and weirdness. And yet I still find myself going out there and being like, is it true? What's this? What's that? What should I do? How should I think? And then it's like the second I can turn, right? And even the word repentance is turn. Like if I can turn back to Christ, and not even always when I feel like I'm caught in sin, but just when I feel like I'm getting lost or doubting, it's clarity again. And it's like, and also like I can't trust myself. I think that's the biggest. It's weird to know that I can only trust that I can't trust myself, and I can trust Christ. Like I have shown myself to not be trustworthy, and that like God is the Father, and Christ is the King, and I got to follow His advice. Because if I follow my advice, it's like giving your 2-year-old the keys to the car and saying, "Good luck out there, son." Like it's just gonna be a mess, And that's what it is for me. Every time I think I can. Again, these analogies sometimes I heard in Christianese, like, oh, let Christ take the wheel. Like I didn't. It's kind of like the gospel. Like I don't really understand the depth of it, but it's like, okay, like it doesn't mean I'm not doing anything, I'm not participating, right? It means I'm very much participating, but I'm looking to God first. I'm looking to understanding what choices make sense based on what I understand about His truth to be before I decide. Because and keep the gospel too. I think specifically the gospel of repentance and sacrifice and the blood of Christ, I think is another thing too, because when you start getting lost, it's so easy to feel like God doesn't love you. Like, look at you, you're a sinner, you're a fake Christian, you don't deserve to be loved. Or even worse, lies, like it's all fake. Like you're just trying to do this, the doubts will just come and come and come, and then, um, and so the importance of like the gospel, and again, knowing what the Bible says about things, like you're going to be tested, there's going to be trials, like your faith is going to, you're going to have doubts and you're going to have all these things. So it's okay, to have that, or even Lamentations, like the Psalms, there's just, you're human and God knows that. And God knows what you don't know. So just the trust is so important. And it's weird though, sometimes it's hard. Like, maybe it's like a kid who gets caught, or like, I think actually it's like a kid who gets maybe hurt or is having trouble at school, and he goes in his room and he hides from his parents. Maybe he cut himself and he hides his wound, or maybe he went to the bathroom in his pants when he's diapering, and he hides it, right? Like your dog hides it, right? There's this shame that comes in when we fail and we're not good enough. And we don't want to go to the source that can help us. Or it's like, I'm just sitting here in my sin, or I'm sitting here in my confusion and my pain and my frustration. And I know that you can help me, but it's like, I don't want your help. I want to do it myself. Or I just, there's something weird about going to our Father to fix the problem, or give us clarity, or help us out, or whatever it is, or tell us that, hey, like, it's just, you got to wait it out. Like, this is a trial, or this, you need patience, or whatever. But so again, I think that's the power of the gospel. Isn't a one and done. It's daily. It's sometimes moment by moment. And the more I know this from my own self, but again, it's like the Bible, the words of truth, the words of life, like Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. What does that mean? It's like, again, it started with the truth, and now I realize there's a way, and like the truth was like my conversion, and now the way is like, and Pilgrim's Progress is a great,
John Bunyan, baby.
it's a great story of that, because you're like, you can get so confused, right? And so lost in the world, and there's always the world out there. But yeah, and you never give up the gospel. You never give up, because it's the way too, and you're on the way, and you got to hold the faith. And so I don't know. I can talk forever, but that's really it. It's so simple, but so hard and so complex too.
Amen.